By default, all the lines you draw in AutoCAD are just 1 pixel thick. This looks good on screen because it gives you clean, crisp lines, and this helps you to draw accurately. However, it's a different story on paper. For centuries, traditional draftspeople have known that physical drawings look their best with at least 3 different line weights. In this lesson, you will assign different line weights to layers, and will visualize this temporarily on screen. Type LW, this is the command alias for the L-weight command, and press Enter. Here you see a list of line weights, and they're all given in millimeters. And this is the case even if you're using feet and inches. And I think the reason for this is that everyone has an intuition about technical pencils. The most commonly used technical pencils are 0.5 millimeters. You can also find them as 0.7 millimeters, and if you go to a drafting store you can find them in all different sizes, but probably not as many as AutoCAD lists here. Now if I go ahead and select a thick line weight like 0.7 millimeters and click OK, notice what happens up here on the Properties panel. It's selected that in this Properties drop-down. If I draw a line, it looks the same as all the other lines on screen. I'll zoom in closer. It's represented by a single pixel width. Go down here to the status bar and toggle Show Hide Line Weight. There we go. Now we can see an approximation of what this line would look like when it was printed on paper. If I zoom out, you'll see that that line appears to get thicker as I keep going out. Well, actually it isn't. It's maintaining the exact same thickness no matter which magnification I'm in. You see, if I zoom in, it's the same thickness no matter what. So its effective thickness changes depending on magnification. So this line weight toggle isn't really meant to be an honest representation of line weight. It's really just meant to give you an idea of the relative thickness of lines. So I'm going to go up here and change this back to by layer. It's generally not a good idea to draw objects with specific properties that are overridden. Instead, the best practice is to assign line weights to layers. So let's go to the Layer Manager and change the AWALS layer to have a different line weight here. I'll click on Default and I'll select 0.7 millimeters. Okay. Now all the walls in the drawing appear with this line weight. Now this is going to be hard to work in a drawing like this because it's so thick. We can do a couple of things. We can go back to line weight by typing LW Enter, and we can adjust the display scale by toning this down a bit. Okay, now it's not so overpowering, and I might actually be able to work in a drawing like this. But the lines don't really appear that crisp, the corners seem rounded off, and so this is really, again, just meant to be a visual reminder of your line weights. But when you're actually drawing, I recommend keeping this toggle off. Let's go back to the LW command and adjust the default line weight, which is set right here. I'll open this up, and let's say the default lines are going to be just a bit thicker at 0.35 millimeters. Okay. I have to keep that in mind, because when I go into the Layer Properties Manager, I have to mentally remember that the default line weight of all of these layers is 0.35 millimeters. So if I want to make a line that's thinner, I have to just keep track of that. So a lot of thought usually goes into a layer standard so that the layers are all mapped out to different line weights and line types. But this is something that you can evolve over time, or you can use a layer standard in an office where you might work, where this has already been figured out for you. Now let's decide on a couple of line weights for different layers. Click right here, and you'll see that this layer is a tile. So this is just a floor transition. It really should be a very thin line, because it really doesn't represent anything that's poking up out of the floor plane. It's just a transition. So let's make that very thin. A tile will be thin. And then Escape. I'll click here, and this is the A brick layer. Okay, that would be thicker, wouldn't it? A heavy brick wall should be bolder on the plan. So let's go back to the Layer Manager and change these two layers. A brick will have a thicker line weight, perhaps as thick as the walls. I'll make it 0.7. And the A tile layer will be very thin. I'll set it at 0.2 millimeters. So again, let's turn on line weight to see what that looks like on screen. We get a visual preview of what the lines are relative to each other, but you really have to see how the line weight looks on paper to get the full effect. In this video, you have learned how to use the lweight command to assign the default line weight to the drawing, and also how to assign specific line weights to layers and objects